Welcome to Beyond the Frontline podcast, where your host, U.S. Air Force veteran Donna Hoffmeyer, will help you transition from the front line to the home front. Listen every other Wednesday as we'll bring great conversations, resources, tips, and feel-good stories that will resonate and relate. Now, here's your host, Donna Hoffmeyer.
Hey everyone, this is Donna with Beyond the Frontline, and I am here today with part 3, or the third series, maybe that's what we'll say, the third series with our one and only realtor, Elizabeth Long from Exit Realty. Did I say that right? Realty. Oh my Lord.
Everybody wants to put an extra A in there.
Yeah, Yeah, I think I'm doing that. Now I'm not going to say it right. Anyways, she has her own division in Exit called Fidelis Homes, and she is in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And if you listen to us, you probably heard the first 2 of hers. We've been putting them out about once a month, and we have talked about real estate tips for the veteran. We've also talked about real estate tips for realtors that want to or are working with veterans. And then she had said to me, I'd love to actually talk about something that I am interested in also, which is the homeless. And I said, that's a really good idea. And I'd love to talk about it from a real estate or a real perspective, because I know that in the work that I do with veterans, when I have somebody that is struggling and maybe it's finding a home that they can afford, I reach out to my realtor friends and I'll say, can you find this, or can you help with a rental type thing? And they're usually really kind, because a lot of my realtor friends are veterans, so they're like, heck yeah, and they will help out to try to find that. So I am curious, from a realtor standpoint, what you see and how you step in to try to do your part in your business. So welcome back, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much, Donna.
So
I appreciate it.
Let's just talk the big picture. That we'd love to think that we've got all our veterans and we've got them all situated. And I think we've done really big strides. I know Texas has actually decreased theirs. I think their initial number, and I can't remember how many years ago, but we were like upwards of like 11,000, and they're at 4,000 now. 4,000 is still a big number.
That's a significant decrease,
but it's a big decrease, right? So they work hard. We have things like the HUD-VASH program, or VASH-HUD program. We could talk about that in a little while, but they're to help them get into affordable housing and safe housing. We do have a lot of nonprofits that help out. I do work with a lot of the nonprofits to help them get resources, but still exists, it's still there. And what's the national number, roughly?
Let's see. In 2024, at least 41,000 homeless veterans. That's from the 2024 Department of Veterans Affairs.
41,000.
No, I'm sorry. That's set goals to permanently house at least 41,000.
I think I saw, what was the last number? 36,000? I think that's the one that I saw nationally.
Yeah, in 2023. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, 36,000
veterans.
36,000 veterans. That's so still quite a bit. I mean, it'd always be worse, but it's still there. Yeah. So there's a lot of, what do you see from a real estate standpoint? Do you engage with a lot of these veterans that are struggling? Do you have people reach out to you when they're struggling from a...
So I've had a couple recently. So I have one client who he's living with his daughter, and they're their living situation is changing, and so he needs to find a place of his own. And so he has his own hot dog stand, and
Nice.
that's how he, earns his money. He goes all over the place. Apparently he's got really, really delicious hot dogs, because I talked to a couple other people and says, yeah, his hot dogs are awesome. But that's how he makes his income. And then he gets Social Security, but that's it. And so, I mean, he
Does he
works
have
really
any,
hard.
does he have any VA benefits or?
No, he says he hasn't got any. I haven't pried, on that, but I want to ask him, what has he done? Does he have any issues where that he could get a disability rating for that? So that's part of talking to veterans as a realtor. There's so much information that I need to know to be able to help a client, particularly a veteran client that may have or may not have disabilities. And so I don't, depending on the person's personality and where they're coming from, how old they are, where they've been, I don't want to dive right in and go, so what's your disability rating? Or,
Right.
do you have any issues that you haven't, pursued, kind of thing, because if we haven't met in person yet, and this is just a phone call to start out with, you've got to be respectful. And some people are totally open and fine talking about those things, and others are very protective of that information for whatever reason. And so I've got to just kind of feel out the person as we talk. And it may not be in those first couple phone calls that I feel like I can start asking some of those questions, but maybe in future ones. And then I find out more information. And then, if it sounds like they may have issues where they could get a disability rating, but they just haven't bothered or even thought to inquire about it, then I can bring up, hey, you might want to contact the VA and start that process, because, you could be getting some benefits from what you're experiencing related to your service.
So,
I think it's safe to say that a lot of veterans out there are not getting the benefits that they could.
yes. And so it's interesting that, homelessness is not a single problem, single solution situation,
Right.
right? There's a lot of things that lead to it. In my world, what I saw that led to financial struggle were things like what you just talked about, not having VA benefits. For what reason? So for some people, there's a lot of anger towards the military.
Mm-hmm.
They want out and they don't want to deal with it anymore. And so that will lead to them not only being angry at the military, but anything associated with it. So VA
Yeah.
included. So I have had people, they're like, I'm not applying. I have a good friend. Well, he's a friend from high school and he was in the military. And just from the little bit I know, he would have a pretty high rating.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's our age and he does a very physical job right now. And I know that disability money would help him so he wouldn't have to beat his body so hard doing the jobs that he's
Yeah.
doing. So I tried to have a discussion very lightly just to start talking about it to see if I could encourage him to maybe, inquire.
Yeah.
And I could see the stress that it put on him. There was no way. There was absolutely no way. He had a lot of anger. I do not know what happened. I never inquired, but whatever the situations were for him, the military was clearly not healthy for him.
Yeah.
And so, I let it drop, but it kind of breaks my heart because I know that he has to live more paycheck to paycheck because he's not going for this disability. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. And I've seen that in different realms. Another one that I see is that it can turn into a slippery slope. They come out the door and they're not quite prepared for like the drop in pay, or the next job that they get is not equal pay.
Yes.
That can start turning into a problem if, like, in the military, like, I'll give an example. When I stationed at Lakenheath, it was always like the running joke, like I had a backpack That's what I carried around.
Yeah.
And the techs that I worked with were carrying like Dooney and Burke bags. I didn't even know what Dooney and Burke was. I saw DB and I was like, oh, those are my initials. Like that was my maiden name, Donna Beloin. And they're like, oh, that's Dooney and Burke. I'm like, who? What? Didn't even know anything.
Yeah.
Like I obviously not a trendsetter. And so it was kind of the running joke that they had these nice cars, nice purses, or whatever it was, when we were in Europe, because obviously you could get it at a better rate. And I think that sometimes when they get out, they are not prepared for the difference. And so they're like, I have nice
Absolutely.
things and I keep kind of getting nice things, and you can't afford those. You don't have the same security financially that you
Yes.
have in the military. The military, the paycheck is always coming. It is always coming.
Yeah,
know?
that's a very good point that you bring up. And I'm glad you did, because, usually you're pretty young when you start out in the military. And, unless you specifically had, some courses in high school about finance, or your parents were particularly good about teaching you proper finance management and planning, which probably didn't happen. You go into the military and, like you said, things are pretty mapped out for you. You're told what's happening and you're like, okay, that's what's happening. And you just do it. And you get that regular paycheck, and that's just the way it is. And then when you're getting out of the military and expected to manage things very differently, and all of a sudden it's your responsibility to figure out your budget and what income you're getting, and utilities and housing and your family and future, and nobody's taught you how to do that.
And the younger you are, the worse it is. So there is some
Yeah.
in the military. I will not knock them. They do provide some. I do not quote me, but I think that there's some in the first couple years, but you have to also kind of seek it too. So it's not like,
Yes.
I'm going to sit you down, we're going to look at all your finances and we're going to make a budget for you. I mean, it's not like that. It's more like
Right.
guidance, right? So the younger you are coming back out, yeah. Matter of fact, I was just thinking about it and I was like, in this sense, in the financial sense, it is harder to manage yourself in college than it is in the military, because you have all the benefits. And here you must go to your regular medical checkup. You must go to your dental. You are getting a regular paycheck. You are getting, sorry, my phone is near me. You are getting, well, I mean, you're being told that you have to do regular exercise. I mean, everything is set up. When you're at college, you have to manage yourself, like you have to do your homework, and you have to, if you're lucky and you can afford a food plan and you get to go eat at the cafeteria, and that's good. But if you live off campus, you have to go find your own food, and, medical, hopefully you have some parents insurance. I mean, it's not so like, here you go. It's a little more everywhere. So I see that. And then here's another component. The longer you're in, the more this becomes relevant, is the medical and mental health side.
Yeah.
So this is where I see a big problem occur. So they come out of the military, and let's just say they did a whole career, and they're dealing with mental and or physical health issues. What does that look like? So depending, if you come out with a whole career, I mean, you have TRICARE and then you have VA. So you have some of that, but there can also still be dealing with copay issues. I just found out recently, I took my daughter, we have TRICARE Prime, took her to the physical therapist, and I still had to pay a copay. I'm like, oh, that's nice, because it was off base, right? So you're dealing with yourself physically and mentally. And if you're not
Yeah.
getting treated and you're not in a good space, it is very hard to think about other things that have to happen, like paying your bills,
Absolutely.
like making a
Yeah.
budget.
You've
You
got to
see,
take care of the basic needs first
right,
before you can work on anything else. And that's, regardless of whether you're in the military or not, that's pretty much a basic human need, is to
right.
have those basics first before you can develop anything else. And that I want to bring up something that you mentioned before, so, you're usually pretty young when you're in the military or in the guard or wherever you are. And there are, financial, I don't know if they're called financial advisors, but they do advise on finances. I know at the Guard. In fact, I was just at the Joint Force headquarters in Nashville last week talking to their family readiness specialist there. And so they do have somebody there that is available for anyone who wants to ask about planning a budget or, helping to increase your credit score and things like that. But I don't know that it's mandatory. So, you kind of have to reach out, think about it, in order to get his resources and benefit from that. Myself and an Army veteran who's a VA lender and a Marine veteran who is a financial advisor, we came in and talked with the financial readiness specialist and said, all right, we want to provide resources for your personnel here because they need to know what options they have. And even though they're young right now and maybe they're not ready to buy a house right now, that's okay. Maybe, they're not in position to use that VA loan, or maybe they only have $200 to spare for any kind of savings. That's okay. But they need to know the basics of the VA loan and why it's so important to use that benefit for them. They need to know how and why it's so important to find a realtor who understands their situation, whether they're in the Guard, whether they're active duty, whether they're a veteran. Those different circumstances make a big difference when it comes to how you approach buying a home and what kind of home.
So you Guard and
For
Reserve, and
them.
well, let me stop you on that note for a
Yeah.
second. It just popped in my head. When you're dealing with anybody getting out prior to retirement or Guard and Reserve that cannot get their retirement until they're 60 or whatever the reduced number is for them,
Mhm.
that's a whole different ball game of, maybe they didn't get medically retired. So now they have health issues and they're not getting rated on it at that time. So now they have like no income coming in there and they don't have a retirement.
Yeah.
And so you
Yeah.
have, or they have a very low, like, people get 10% rated or 20%. And for medical boards, if you're in the military and you're getting medically boarded, if you get less than 30%, it's a separation. They give you basically a lump sum pay. That's it.
Uh-huh.
And then you're off and you don't get TRICARE. And there's a lot of limitations that can happen when
Yeah.
they are separating. Now, having said that, the military has offset some stuff where they're doing the blended retirement, where people can, and I believe it's matching, like it's kind of like a matching situation, 401k. So they can put money in and then they can get matched. So anybody, in theory, anybody along the continuum will have some level of a nest egg if they opt in to do this blended retirement.
Right.
So
if they opt in.
If they go ahead and do it, I think they actually have to opt out is what has to happen.
Oh, okay.
I think
That's
everybody's
better.
in it unless they opt out, which is a good thing.
It is a good thing.
So that does help offset because that was happening. They're coming out the door. Can you imagine doing 11 years, Guard and Reserve, I don't know, even active duty,
Yeah.
And let's say you're hurt. Now I've seen this numerous times in Garden Reserve. We can't use you. We're going to let you go. Army loves to do that.
Uh-huh.
And they separate them and they don't get medically boarded. I've seen that happen many times. I've seen that happen often with MSTs. That's a great example. I literally had a situation where it was a female. She got separated, I think at around 10 or 11 years under Fat Girl program. And she had multiple MSTs and obviously psychologically was not doing well, gained weight from the stress and everything else. And the Army solution was to run her through her PT test consecutively, like as soon as she could do the next. So did one, failed, whatever the time period was, wait, did one, failed, third time, failed, oh, sorry, 3 strikes, you're out. And they separated her.
Wow.
No joke, right? She went through a whole lot. Now, I don't think she ended up homeless, but I think she had family support. And we're going to talk about this right after, is that, but the mental health, her mental health was atrocious. Not only does she have to deal with the MSTs by themselves, she had her whole service turned their back on her and said, oh yeah, look
11
at you,
years,
gained weight. Now she's out, no medical board, no retirement, can't do the VA because there's nothing to connect. And now she has to get out on her own and figure out her own way. So that brings me into this other component that puts people at a higher risk for mental health. And I am just speaking as, a prior military nurse that watched a lot of this stuff. And as a veteran advocate now, the stuff that I see, right? So I'm not going to go run around, grab all these statistics for you, but I am going to tell you anecdotally the stuff that we see.
Yeah.
And support. Holy cow, right? Everybody's trying to solve 22 a day and, how do we stop all this? And if you could peel back some of these situations, not all of them, because there are people that have had tons of support that still have managed to end their life. And that is a sad reality. But if you peel back some of those stories of these people struggling, what you start finding out, very limited support. One of the hardest cases I worked, my biggest concern was that he didn't have family support. He was estranged from his parents. And when his mom would reach out, it was only for one thing: money. To the point where she was doing things like, let's set up an account that you can put money in and I can grab it. And so no support. And this gentleman subsequently did not make it. He did pass away. But by all accounts, here is a gentleman that was receiving VA benefits, who's a guard, and because of his very severe alcoholism and mental health issues, he literally called one of our people around Thanksgiving and said, I have no money to pay rent. This is a guy that was receiving regular income from disability. I have no money to pay rent because his alcoholism was so out of control, he drank it. His mental health was so out of control. We were coming in on that and we were helping it. We were getting him to the care he needed. So we were doing all that. But because he had no support, no family, friend support, he couldn't maintain himself.
Yeah. Support is just so important. Some people are, I hate to use the word strong enough because I don't want people to think that they are the opposite peak if they're not doing something, so I'm trying to find a different word, but
Yeah, it's not strong, but I understand
some
what you're saying. Like,
people have, are able to lift themselves up out of a very desperate situation or combination of situations. That's a unique that's a unique circumstance, because when you've got multiple things piling up on you, multiple reasons why you're not being able to pay your rent, why you've got some medical issues or injuries that you're still dealing with, and then that puts a stress on you, and then your mental health starts to deteriorate, and then that affects you being able to do everything else in your life. It compounds
right.
on everything, compounds on everything else.
And you know what number we don't have, because this is what the difference is. When I see support and no support, it also can be the difference between homelessness and near homelessness.
Right.
And
yes.
I don't know what that number is for near homelessness. We have a
Let's
tentative
see if I can look it
number.
up.
Yeah, maybe you can see it there. But near homelessness, I have people that are, by definition, they are technically homeless. And the only reason they are not is because they have a family member, maybe a family member they're living with, maybe a family member that is aiding them financially. Maybe they're helping them, pay part of rent or something like that.
Yeah.
But if that didn't exist, they would be homeless.
Yeah. Yeah. They're just literally like one situation away from being completely homeless. So in 2023, like we said earlier, there are about 36,000 veterans experiencing homelessness in the United States. In terms of sheltered and unsheltered then, so about a little over 20,000 veterans were sheltered, meaning they were staying in emergency shelters or transitional housing or with a friend.
Yeah.
And then unsheltered were 15,500. Where basically, they're sleeping in the streets.
Yeah.
Or in their car. Yeah.
And I know it's kind of crazy when we say this, but there are homeless that it is too much to deal with everything, would almost prefer in some sense to be homeless. I'm not saying that like, oh yes, I just want to live on the streets. That's not what I'm saying. It's just trying to handle, they know I can't handle rent, utilities, phone, computer, whatever. This is simplified. It's not the best, but I can manage this, right? So there is that as a factor, right? And if there is, I'm going to spin this a little bit, because it made me think of a social experiment, and then it leads me to what you're doing with the realtors and the education. There was a social experiment done. This was years ago. It was not a veteran, but it was a homeless person in San Francisco. They gave the homeless person $100,000 cash. And they said, do as you want with us. We will see you in a year. Right. So
that's all they said.
Yep. They were like,
wow.
This is yours. We're going to follow. They would follow up with him, but then they were going to do like kind of a final thing in a year. What do you think the state of him was in 1 year?
Probably the same, unfortunately.
Yeah, he was homeless again. So they reflected on that, and they thought it was interesting. And they said a key piece, so if they were going to do it again, a key component of this would be the education, right?
Absolutely.
So you have a new branch. It's not a branch. What is where you're focusing in on veterans and first responders and teachers?
Oh, right. Yes. Sorry, I'm pausing because I've got multiple things in my brain. Yeah. So yeah, I started a division of agents at Exit Realty Bob Lamb and Associates in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, because when I first started in real estate, not really been in sales. That's not been my career in the past.
Mhm.
And a lot of people see realtors as being, pushy, or they're just after one transaction and the next, and they don't really, care about the people and stuff like that. I didn't want to be that sort of realtor. And fortunately, I have met many, many, many realtors in my brokerage and others who are not that way. They really care about their clients.
Right.
But I needed something, within me, a passion within me to drive me forward in real estate. And so I have family members on my side of the family and my husband's side of the family that are in the military and in healthcare workers, in law enforcement, teachers. And I saw how much of their lives and their families, how many sacrifices they made because of the career that they were in, what they were going through, some of the trauma that they were experiencing because of their occupations. And so I just wanted to give back. And so I found out about Homes for Heroes. And it's a program that I pay to be a part of. It was developed after 9/11, the events of the 9/11, as a way to give back to those communities. And so realtors and lenders can be a part of Homes for Heroes. So when a client works with me, either buying a home or selling a home, they get a rebate check back after closing as a thank you for their service. And literally all they have to do is just sign a form that says, yep, I'm working with a Homes for Heroes affiliate realtor. There's no red tape. There's nothing else besides that. And their rebate check, their thank you check, is based on their home sale price. And if you sell a home and buy another home, you get 2 checks back. And the average is about $3,000. It can be more than that, depending on your home sale price. And if you're selling and buying with the 2 checks, I had a client last year bought and sold, and they got over $5,000 back between those 2 checks. So it's a decent amount of money. And so I give 30% of my compensation as a realtor to Homes for Heroes, and that money is used to provide that thank you check. And then another portion is given to the nonprofit foundation at Homes for Heroes. And they use that money to give grants to other nonprofits who support veterans and Gold Star families.
That's awesome.
So that comes out of a natural passion of mine. So that's what drives me forward in real estate. And I love just being part of all those communities, the veteran community, healthcare, teachers, love connecting with them. In fact, I was just at Vet Fest in Brentwood, Tennessee this past weekend. So many nonprofit organizations were there, in all capacities to support veterans. Found some great people. And so part of our division of realtors at Exit Bob Lamb is part of the structure is to be a part of some kind of nonprofit, whether you're on the board, whether you help volunteer in your community for a certain nonprofit or organization. Part of it is just giving back, have that natural way to reach out to that community. So not only are you benefiting that community in a natural way that you might personally enjoy, so I might find a realtor who maybe they used to work in the healthcare field, or maybe they have family who are healthcare workers and they feel strongly about that community. That's a natural way to be involved. And then, they have more access to people and just natural conversations. And then those people find out, oh, you're a Homes for Heroes agent. I've, can provide you that thank you check. And I also pair with lenders who know about the VA loan. They know what they're doing with the VA loan.
Yeah.
Or I'm pairing with lenders who know about specific loans that are made for physicians and nurses and law enforcement, first responders.
What?
That's important to have all those connections to
Yeah.
help your clients.
Well, that leads me into the next question. You just said all these connections. What if somebody comes to you and says, I have someone that is homeless or near homeless? How, I need help. How
Yeah.
would you and your agents come about that? How would you handle that? Because I've had
Yeah.
everything from like, yeah, I don't do that, to, hey, you can, did they get the VA benefits? Like that, it's kind of a, not, I'm not going to say anybody's rude. Nobody has been rude,
Right.
but how, how do you see yourself plugging into that, your group of people, like what you're developing?
Yeah. So yeah, nothing against, other realtors who maybe say, well, if a realtor just says, I don't do that, that's not a good enough answer.
Yeah.
You could at least say, I'm not sure, or I don't know of any organization off the top of my head, but I would be happy to look into it for you.
Right. Or
That's a
refer.
better answer.
Right. Yeah.
Instead of, I don't do that, So yeah, it's important for us to get connected with other organizations in our community so we are aware of what resources are out there for veterans. So we may not personally, be able to provide something, but knowing all the resources that we can, link these persons up to. So we have Operation Stand Down, Tennessee. There's multiple locations. There's one in Nashville, one in Columbia. And so they provide a lot of help for veterans. They do have transitional housing now. They have a new facility in Nashville. I believe they can house, I think it's 7 veterans at their new facility there. And it's beautiful. I helped out for a day to help set things up. Each veteran has their own room with a bed and lockable storage, their own separate bathroom there in their room. And then there's 4 different like general living areas, 4 kitchens. They partner with all kinds of food banks. It's really, really amazing. They do amazing things there. So that's a really good resource. Unfortunately, because of, money that's, provided to Operation Stand Down, a veteran has to be homeless or they can receive some of these benefits. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to be homeless for months and months. It could literally be them calling Operation Stand Down and a representative asking, where did you sleep last night?
Yeah.
And if the veteran, slept in their car, okay, we can help you get some services.
What if it's a situation where it's like, I don't know, getting evicted or, and I have no financial means to get a new place. I mean, would that consider like you're basically 1 foot out the door?
That's
okay.
Yeah. So I know of a nonprofit called Wish for Our Heroes. And there's a Nashville chapter here. It's all over the United States. They have chapters all over. And they do help depending on the, situation. They do properly vet the applications that they get because unfortunately there's some people who like to take advantage.
Yeah.
So they make sure that, helping a veteran in need. So, they've financially assisted veterans when, they're going through a tough period of time in their life, or veteran families who have small children and they might need a cranial helmet because they've got, a little bit of a misshapen head. And, they just need a cranial helmet for a few months or something. A lot of veteran or military families, their insurance does not cover this cranial helmet. It's considered cosmetic. So they'd have to fork out $2,500 or more for this cranial helmet. And so Wish for Our Heroes will purchase the helmet for
So
them.
it's funny, right? So you say like Wish for a Hero, like that fills these gaps, right? Because somebody having to pay for certain things, like I've had Garden Reserve service members tell me I am copay broke. They are paying out of pocket for this, paying out of pocket for that, copay this, copay that, because their insurance doesn't cover the whole thing. And they're like, I literally am copay break. I'm struggling to meet my basic needs now because I have all these medical appointments and it's costing me $50 every appointment or $30 at every appointment. Or now I have to go buy some piece of equipment that the insurance isn't covering. And it adds up, right? People don't realize this stuff adds up. Not all of us are retired with VA benefits, you know, so getting disability and retirement. That is not everybody's status. As a matter of fact, I don't remember I used to know the number of how many actually retired. And I want to say it's the 10 to 20% range or something like that. So there's a lot of people that before that, and then you're dealing with medical issues, mental health issues, whatever that is. It's like the slow bleed, right? You slow bleed. So to me, like when I hear you and what you're doing, I think I put this maybe call out to all the realtors that are interested in dealing with veterans, expand yourself a little bit more to at least have an awareness of the near homeless and the homeless and be networked with those resources that you can connect them to, like become buddies with the DAV or the VSOs in the DAV, or go to some of these VA events and learn about, you know, I see realtors at a lot of different events, you know, and that, you know, the bonus is they get to say, hey, I'm with this company and this is what I do. But as the realtor, learn, like really understand and learn. And like you, Elizabeth, have this whole separate entity that you're standing up to zero in on veterans and first responders and teachers and learn about us, learn what happens, learn the resources and the connections. You don't have to have that answer, but I bet you receive those calls that are like, I don't know what else to do. I am about to be homeless, or my dad's about to be homeless, and we don't have the money, you know, to help that person. You know, I was talking to somebody and I made the comment, they were in some financial challenges. And I said, did you talk to your children? She's an older person and she has grown kids. And in my head, I was telling her, did you make them aware? That's all I was referring to. But her comment to me back was interesting. She goes, well, no, they don't have the money. They're all in debt. They can't help me. And it just kind of caught me for a minute. And I was like, well, I was just referring to an awareness thing. But it also lends to the bigger thought. Families sometimes cannot help other families out. Maybe they don't have space.
They're
in their
struggling
home.
too.
They're financially struggling. It's going to, maybe they're doing okay, but one more thing and it's going to pull them under. There's generational trauma that's happening. There's a generational financial issues that are happening. They don't want to be a burden. And that's another big thing with veterans. I've made this comment many times. Veterans are hyper independent. We all are, because we've all had some kind of trauma happen. So I got it. I could do it. One of the biggest signs of trauma is hyper independence, right? Like, I don't need anybody. I got this myself. Until they're not, until they don't have it. And then they're completely codependent. And they may just be sitting there quietly, not saying anything, sinking. And then they're going to hit a point where they're just like, I need resources. I need resources, because they're so far sunk. Whereas we could have caught them in between. where
And
the pendulum doesn't have to swing that damn hard. Like,
no, that's why it's so important to provide education. So
I
at the
think you have
family,
I think you have a new addition to your newly created entity here, where like you educate the realtors and bring
yes,
in the
yes, and
resources,
yes,
like, oh
educating the realtors, educating, like at the guard units, we're gonna be going into their drill weekends and providing workshops to teach them about the VA loan and its use, that they need to use it,
yeah,
and about it matters who you work with when you have a realtor.
yep,
So don't just pick one because they have a license. It really matters. So, just like how everybody tells you if you're getting contract work, have 3 contractors come out and tell you what they're going to do and what they're going to charge. Do that with your realtor. Don't just pick one out of the thin blue air. You've got to know that you can have a down to earth conversation with that realtor about what the transaction, the entire journey of purchasing a home looks like. It is can be very complicated. And there are a lot of implications for a home buyer and a home seller if their realtor does not know what they're doing and does not communicate with them on what might happen based on certain decisions. It's always up to the buyer or seller to make those decisions. And that's not the realtor's job, but it is our job to advise on the entire process. So this goes back to education, educating at these workshops on the drill weekends. We're excited to do that because, again, these are most people are young,
yeah,
they're young 20s, and they, when I was in my 20s, I didn't think about retirement. That was the furthest thing from my mind,
yeah, that was a lot of years away.
absolute furthest thing from my mind. But you're at the perfect position to prepare yourself to have a comfortable retirement. That doesn't mean you have to, sock away $1,000 a month, but do something. It could be
But if you
$20 a
can,
month.
yeah,
If you can, great. If you can't, I think a lot of young people, when they, first of all, like I said, they don't even think about retirement. But number 2, they think that it has to be a significant amount of money each month that they set aside, whether it be for savings or for, investments or your 401k. It does not have to be, because you have time on your side.
people miss
That's the
that boat.
most important thing is you have
Time.
time.
What saying, when's the best time to plant a tree? Yesterday. When's the next best time? Today, right? And there is
Yeah,
truth in
yeah.
that. So those years, those 18 to early 20 years, like I was one of those people at 22 started investing, never stopped, right?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And yes, it paid off, right? So I got to choose when I retired if I wanted to work or not. That's and we have 2 kids, right? So we miss those years. So in your world, I'm trying to stay on track for time this time.
I
We're
know.
gonna behave, right? So we're gonna wind it down this way. In your world, right? You're educating, you're focusing in on these young veterans, right? You're going to go out and speak to these, garden reserves on their benefits and how to utilize them. The importance of starting early, right? And you can easily angle that as like the importance of starting now for the future, like when you do want to buy a house or when you do want to do something bigger. And then there's this other component of teaching the other realtors how to be properly networked, right?
Yeah.
And that's one thing I hear you talk about is like you just sat there and was like, oh, there's Wish for Heroes and there's what was the other one? Operation
Stand Down.
Stand Down, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard of I think I've heard of Operation Stand Down.
Okay.
So, you were rattling this off. So if I went to you, but Elizabeth, I have somebody in Tennessee that is literally 2 months away from homelessness. Like they just got evicted. They've got 60 days to get out. And where they are based, they cannot afford anything more. And oh, by the way, we all know that the cost of living just went up threefold.
Yeah.
And that's like a real thing. Like when I retired, we could have moved, right? It was right
Mhm.
during the frenzy. Those in
Oh, okay,
Texas,
yeah.
we had the whole selling frenzy going on for 2
Mhm.
straight years. And we have a very low interest rate on our house. It's very well situated for where we live and what the things we need to do with our kids going to school. Kids are in good schools, right? If we would have opted to move, we would have made a pretty penny on our house,
Mhm.
but it wouldn't have been enough to buy the house that we would have wanted.
Right.
It
Yeah.
would not have matched. We would have been short probably a good $100,000+ because of cost of living just
Yep.
shot up everywhere. And so
Yes.
here's somebody that's all of a sudden, I might be evicted. And 5 years ago, be like, okay, we'll find another place, and you'd find a similar. Now for the exact same thing,
Mhm.
it's double the cost or whatever that is,
Well,
whatever the number
yeah,
is.
and apartment, you know,
Woo.
oh my gosh, apartments are so expensive. You might as well buy a house,
And
with
what if you
the
can't, right?
rent.
So now you
Right.
can't because you were renting. Maybe your credit history is El Crapo, and now you're in a place where you got to move. Oh, and you separated from the military. So you don't have a retirement, you don't have a disability, or maybe you just have a low disability. Maybe you're only getting $500, $600, $700 a month,
Yeah.
right? You see where that starts, right? And oh,
Yeah.
let's also add, I don't have any family that lives here. I don't have any support, and I can't go back and live with them because they're struggling. Now
Yeah.
you see this thing. And so this is why I loved having this conversation with you, because you have a very wide perspective and you keep a lot on your radar. And because of that, if somebody came to you in that situation, oh, you're not going to be able to get them into a house of their dreams at a
Right.
moment's notice or anything like that because it's not realistic.
Right.
Maybe you luck out and you know somebody that's willing to rent their house at below market value,
Mhm.
or something that's coming on. You have all that knowledge. But what you also really have is all this networking that you've done with Operation Stand Down and
Mhm.
Wish for Heroes and all these other different entities that you now know about, and you can say, hold on, I
Yeah.
don't have that solution, but I can get you somewhere and I can start getting you in that direction. Because
Yeah, it's just taking a bit of effort to work with the individual on where they are
yeah,
at that moment in time. So at Exit Realty Bob Lamb, we've got, a division also for rental properties. And so, for the client that I mentioned earlier with the hot dog stand, he needs to find somewhere to live. He can't afford to purchase a home right now. So I said, okay, let me reach out to our rental home division and talk to the property manager there and see what information I can get.
yeah,
And there were a couple rental properties that were close to his price range that he could afford per month. However, most every apartment complex requires you to have 3 times the rent in income just
yes,
when you apply. That's typical across the board. And then, that doesn't even include like, first or last month's rent that they might, ask for upfront, or if you've got a pet deposit fee, you know, and it costs a lot of times $50 just to apply, and that's not refundable.
yeah,
So you're forking out all kinds of money on the front end, and you don't even know if you're going to be able to get the apartment.
right.
So, he definitely wasn't gonna have, 3 times the rent. So I just, I took the time to reach out to our manager and have a conversation with her and say, hey, I've got a veteran. This is he's got going on. He's working really hard. He regularly goes out and is making money. He's got some Social Security income. He just can't, he just doesn't have pay stubs to show that he's got
Right.
3 times the income. Is there anything that we can work out with him? So, I opened up that conversation. She was more than willing to work with me and, try to work out a situation that benefited everybody. So we're currently working on finding the right place for him. And, there's not a whole lot available in his price range, but the fact that I reached out and she's aware, she's going to keep her eyes open for when something pops up. And, I'll be the first one she calls so that I can let him know, hey, there's this option here available for you, instead of talking to him and going, well, you know what? I'm sorry, we don't have any in your price range, and leaving it at that.
Right. That's the difference.
Like,
So, and that's kind of what I like when I first met you, is kind of what I saw in you, like this curiosity, like, how do we do it better? And so what you're
yeah,
developing right now, I think is going to be probably one of the first of its kind. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that I think you're going to be able to teach other interested realtors. How do you go about that?
yeah,
Or having events where it's like reverse, like instead of the realtor being at the table at the event, maybe they're the ones that they're invited into a resource event of all the resources for veterans, and they get to know them,
hmm,
and get to learn about them and what they offer, and have that in
yeah,
their back pocket. Again, I may not know the answer. I might not be able to solve this specifically,
yeah,
but and then there's one other component, and it's more work, but follow up with them, right? Like, you followed
yes,
up
yeah,
with this guy, like, how did it go? Because I will
hmm,
tell you, there are many times where the veteran goes, I don't say many, but enough times the
it does
veteran
happen. Yeah,
goes and they don't have a good experience. Now, it could be a number of things. Maybe there was translation issues. Maybe the veteran didn't understand what was being asked or
hmm,
said or whatever.
or
You
technology. That's a
Technology
thing
could
that
be
I've
an
come
issue.
across too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or they run into some limitation like, "Oh, well, just do it on your phone." Well, I only have a flip phone that has
yeah,
minutes, or I don't have a phone or something like that, and they're like, "Oh, well, sorry." Be willing to say, "Hey, how did that
hmm,
go?" Because they will not say it. They will just go,
no,
"Didn't work," and they will go off, and you will never know that
yeah,
it
you've got
literally
to
failed.
advocate for that veteran, because unfortunately some of them don't advocate for themselves. And I've found
Yeah.
that I've got to be like, look, you have got to be persistent on this.
Yeah, we work
Don't give up.
together, right.
Yeah, we will work together on this. I'm not going to leave you hanging. I got your 6,
Got your
you
6,
know.
that's right. And if they know that, I'll tell you, lead by example, right? If people
hmm,
see that you're showing up and that you're like, you want the good for them, they will actually keep going.
yeah.
A lot of them. I will
I just
say
need
that,
that little boost. Like,
well, it's a
somebody's there
trust
for
thing.
you.
Like, yeah, that I
Yeah.
don't trust that you're going to be there. So you show that you are,
Yeah.
and you follow up until you know that they got a place.
Yeah.
Then you got their trust, and you're going to learn a lot in the process. Again, you're not going to get them in their dream home where you don't have those fantasies. They might be in transitional
Right.
housing. You might have found a great trailer in a safe neighborhood,
Hey,
that
but it's
they
a
can.
roof over your head. There is
Mhm,
nothing wrong with that.
that's right.
Absolutely nothing wrong.
That they
Yeah.
can make work. So I put that out there to the realtors that are like, yeah, I work with veterans. My question would be to you, how do you work with them? And you have
Right.
to answer that question for yourself. Is it
Hmm.
just well, I get them into a house and that's what I do and I sell
Yeah.
houses? Okay. I mean, I'm not knocking that. We need good realtors, right?
Right. Yeah.
But if you're like, hey, but I get these calls and I want to do more and Okay. Well, go talk to Elizabeth. She can teach you a thing or two on how to connect with them.
Yeah.
Right?
And
How
I
can
want
they
to,
connect with you?
I want to put another plug out for a nonprofit called 220.org. Wonderful nonprofit. They are amazing. They just hired on at least 4 new counselors,
How
and
awesome.
they do not report or go through the VA. They don't go through your insurance. It's free of charge. They can virtually have conversations with you over the phone.
Nice.
And within 2 to 5 sessions, they said their experience is that the PTSD in particular, but also depression, anxiety, significantly reduced. It's really amazing.
Sometimes you just need to talk, sometimes you need some
Yeah, and
redirection.
however they do it, and I'm really curious. I'm planning on having a phone call with the director to get some more information. But whatever their process is, it helps the person remove the emotional tie
Mhm.
to the specific situation or situations that cause that PTSD. Sorry,
They
my
do it
dog.
over the phone or they do it virtually?
It can be over the phone. It can be Zoom, whatever they feel more
Interesting.
comfortable with. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm, very
Yeah.
good.
I'm fascinated. I've got to learn more about that.
Yeah. I think that's the bottom line to all this, right? Be curious,
Yeah. Be curious. Find resources. If you don't know the question, find out.
Yeah. It's okay
I
to not
mean,
know, but it's not
we
okay to
are
just walk away.
at a fantastic, point where we can go on Google and find out just about anything we need to find out. Now, obviously, research your resources,
Right.
make sure you've got accurate information. But I mean, it's never been easier to find out the answer to things.
Agreed. Agreed. So, all
Yeah.
right. What's your last thoughts on this? I think we talked homelessness into the crowd.
My last thoughts are, if you're currently in the military, do whatever you can to educate yourself about the resources you have at your fingertips,
Mhm.
because your future self will thank you. Think of your future self, not just right now.
Good
That's
advice.
really important for everybody, honestly.
Mm.
And, if you're a veteran, if you're an older veteran and you have not done that for yourself, there's always time to start. You can always improve your situation. It might take a little longer. It might look a little different than you'd hoped, but it can happen.
Agreed. I
Yeah.
like it. Hey, where can they find you real quick?
My website is fidelishomestn.com.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to email me, it's elizabeth@fidelishomestn.com.
Perfect. I think you should all reach out and talk to her. She's a wealth of information. So,
Thank
all
you.
right.
Sorry about that dog in the background.
Oh, that's okay. I've got one here that's laying down just outside the door. So, and my phone decided to go off today. So,
That's
all
all right.
right. So, I think we're going to wrap this up. I think my last thoughts are realtors, be curious. You actually have a lot to offer in the homeless realm, even though you don't think you do, but you do because you're actually very connected and very networked. And for those that are struggling, reach out, ask questions. It is okay. We don't
Yes.
want people not asking questions. Everybody is worthy. You are valued. We want to get our arms around you and we want to make sure that everybody is taken care of. So if we talk again another time, that 36,000 homeless will hopefully be cut in half. And maybe one day, idealistically, we nearly eliminate it. So we have an impact. That's what I want people to understand is that
Yeah.
you don't have to go out and, climb the top of the mountain and put a big flag on it and make a big to do. You can do something just as simple as, reaching out to somebody, asking them if they're okay. Right. It means a
Yeah.
lot to people. So
Yeah.
I think that's it for today. And as you know, that our parent podcast is Coming Home Well. And we want you guys to go check out that site, cominghomewell.com, because you will see everything that's going on there, including all our podcasts, plus our live stream that you can listen to 24/7. And if you want to make a comment, reach out, talk to us, you can also email us at cominghomewell@gmail.com. That's it. And all the information will get to me. I always answer questions. So we look for engagement. So from all of us here and Beyond the Frontline and our parent podcast, Coming Home Well, we wish you an awesome week.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Frontline, a podcast of Coming Home Well. Join us every other Wednesday. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. Thanks again. And until all are home and all are well.